Здравствуйте, друзья! Мы по-прежнему находимся в апстейт Нью-Йорк, в прекрасном месте, в горах Адирандак, в лагере Camp Walden, где проходит третий уже по счету фрукторианский фестиваль, Woodstock Fruit Festival. И такое количество здесь замечательных и интересных людей, что я в очередной раз не могу не поделиться с вами очередной такой находкой, которая ясно демонстрирует то, каким успешным, каким полезным и каким процветающим может быть сыроедение, фрукторианство, если оно практикуется правильным образом. И если доктор Грэм нам в прошлый раз являл один такой пример, то сейчас я не могу не поделиться очередным своим знакомством. На этот раз это у нас австралийский фрукторианец. Зовут его доктор Роберт Локхарт, он из Австралии. Более 25 лет он уже сыроед, фрукторианец. Доктор Локхарт хиропрактик. Также у него образование по агрокультуре, то есть сельского хозяйства, садоводчества, по геологии и натуропатии. Это очень известный персонаж, который путешествует по миру, дает лекции, проводит семинары, мастер-классы. Также он является тренером и тренером по фитнесу. И вот здесь, в частности, на фестивале он проводит каждое утро разминки, зарядки и спортивные мастер-классы. Как выглядит этот человек в 70 лет, вы увидите сейчас сами, вряд ли он вам покажет здесь сейчас на камеру то, что он способен делать физически, как он прыгает и ходит на руках, и какие делает уголки, отжимания и прочее, но это, поверьте мне, просто на слово. Итак, я представляю вам доктора Роберта Локхарта, и обращаясь к нему, дальше у нас будет на английском, и, соответственно, перевод вы можете увидеть ниже. So, Robert, I introduced you briefly to Russian audience, and just maybe you can tell us a few words about your life, how you ended up being raw vegan, low-fat raw vegan or fruitarian, and where you live, how you lived, where you traveled, what did you study in your life, what you've accomplished, what's your competence, and whatever, what's the success story of your life, so you can inspire some young raw fruitarians whose age may be less than your stage, that your experience of being fruitarian of 25 years old. So please tell us a few words.
Okay. Well, I was actually born in Scotland during the Second World War, and my parents luckily moved to New Zealand, and I was brought up in New Zealand on a farm, but it was a dairy farm and pig farm, and saw lots of animals being slaughtered and cruelty, but I never thought anything of it, it's just part of life that you think of there. And as I grew up and went to university in New Zealand and did a science degree and then in geology, and then I always knew I wanted to be in a bit of a warmer type of climate, because even New Zealand, which is a beautiful climate really, it's still in the temperate zone, and I knew that man's true home must be in the tropics somewhere. So I moved to Australia, which has a warmer climate, but I was still in a colder area around Brisbane and southern Queensland. And but I started to get into the surf lifesaving movement that's in New Zealand, paddling kayaks and surf skis, and doing a lot of beach events, and playing rugby football, and I was kind of bulked up at that stage, eating very high protein and high fat type of diet. So that type of diet started to have an effect on my body. By the time I was 23, 24, I had very bad pains in my left knee. Actually, that was the first problem that started to, my hair started to fall out. And wow, I thought there must be some better way than this, but I didn't really know. This was back in the 60s. So I luckily came across a lecturer by the name of Paul Bragg, who was talking in Australia at the time, and he said that yes, if you're eating too acidic a diet, it'll cause acids to lodge in the joints, and that was his simple way of putting it, and that sort of thing. Because the only opportunity, according to the medical profession, was to have an operation and scrape out the joint and clean it out. But I thought, if nature's put it there for a reason, and the reason is that nature puts extra toxins, extra waste products into the less vital areas of the body rather than harming the brain or the heart or the lungs. It tends to push the toxins out into the joints where it will cause back pain or knee pain or ankle pain, wrist, etc. So that's pretty well what was happening to me, and I changed my diet overnight when I was 23, so that was about 45 years ago, and became a vegetarian, gave up meat, and I didn't do it for ethical reasons, I did it for survival reasons, I think. And within 3 months my knee pain had really diminished. I was able to run again, and I couldn't run before, it was just too painful, you know. And therefore I thought, wow, this has got to be the way to follow. And as I went along, I got married to an Australian lady while I was studying in America to be a chiropractor and naturopath, because I knew that I wanted to shift away from geology, which was pretty boring at the time. I was thinking of something more dynamic in health and how to be able to help other people too. So I got into chiropractic and what's known in those days as natural hygiene, and it's that profession is still around, the profession of natural hygiene. So if you can, any of you, I'd recommend read Dr. Shelton or Arnold Ehret. He's another actual German author that wrote The Mucusless Diet and Rational Fasting. Now, short fasting is very beneficial because it does speed up the detoxification process, so that was into my life too. I've done some fasts on water, but more recently I've learned more about dry fasting from the Russian angle, and there's many Russian practitioners also, like Melanov and various other Russian practitioners that are conducting dry fast, and I think that is very beneficial, especially if a person's reached the stage where they're partially along the raw food stage, where they have started to detox enough in order to allow a dry fast to be more effective. So I've utilized dry fasting and some, for the last 25 years, being raw and on fruit. That certainly helps with the detox and the living more in accord with nature. It's difficult to do it in a really cold climate. It's more challenging. It can be done, I know, in Europe with our modern transportation, etc. But I always had a dream of having my own land because I had this agricultural background and growing things. So I bought, after I'd coming back to Australia from America, after I'd qualified, I promoted the inversion exercise, hanging upside down, to reverse the stress of gravity on the body. And I was the first to bring in the inversion boots to Australia back in 1975, 76, and lectured throughout Australia, teaching people how to have a pain-free back by utilizing the force of gravity to your advantage, because we sit all day and we stand all day, and gravity is causing compression on our bodies, and it takes its toll throughout life. And as you get older, you especially need to do something which reverses that stress of gravity on your body. And the handstand is probably the best single exercise that you can do, because it reverses the circulatory pooling and the dropped organs that you get and the compression that you get in your organs. you're reversing that when you do a handstand, and it allows the blood to get to areas where it previously can't get to because of compression and stasis or ptosis is what's known as the dropped organ situation. So if you can think intelligently, utilize gravity to your advantage, use living foods, living whole foods, no matter if they're not entirely all fruit or fruits, the one which is most suited and puts the least amount of strain on our bodies. Vegetables, yes, such as mangoes, grapes, and this is durian, which is, I call the king of fruits, but we're up in upstate New York at the moment. I used to grow durian on my property in Australia, but it's a very tropical fruit. It won't grow beyond, say, 15 or 16 degrees latitude either side of the equator. So it's marginal in any areas that are starting to get further away from the equator, because it's a truly non-seasonal tropical fruit, but it contains all the biochemical elements. I lived on durian alone, no other food, no other fruit, for 3 months because I had it growing on my own property, and I had 40 hectares. I had about 18 hectares with thousands of different trees that I'd planted on a previously denuded cane farm, sugar cane farm in northern Australia. And I was still doing some chiropractic practice at that stage and seeing patients and then working on the farm, and just my life was totally involved, you know, and it put some strain on me as a person because I wasn't associating much with anyone outside my own sphere of influence on the farm, and it led to some strains in the marriage. And after 30 years my wife and I decided to part company, and I was wanting to continue more on the raw fruitarian path, and she was a bit more into cooking, and but we're still friends. It's great, you know, that you can have a amicable parting, and since then I've done even more travelling throughout the South Pacific, especially into areas where the coconut is, because I had about 50 coconut trees on my plantation, and the coconut is a wonderful fruit. I call it the tree of life, because the coconut does supply all the nutrients that you need to live as well. You'd be surprised. You can live on very little once your body is detoxified, but you have to reach the stage where you've been on a raw diet for some years before you can live on minimalistic calories and nutrients, because your body does function more efficiently the more cleansed and the longer you've been doing the diet for. The adaptation powers of your body, have faith in your own body, have faith in your own health and your own self-responsibility. We rely far too much these days on so-called experts, and that's what they are, experts telling you this, telling you that. Maybe people will say, oh, you're meant to be an expert, but who knows? I've made lots of mistakes in my life. For example, I've had a marriage breakdown. A lot of my durian trees died, not because of my own fault, but because of graft incompatibility. The trees were grafted trees, which means the beneficial good fruit was taken and grafted onto a root of another tree, and as you didn't realize at first, but as the tree matured and grew after 10 years, it started to die back simply because the graft was incompatible with the rootstock, and the sap couldn't get through the grafting point, which started to swell on the tree, and the the most natural trees are seedling trees planted. Some will be good, some will be not quite so good. So it just shows you that anything you do that goes against the laws of nature, you'll pay for it. You know, you'll pay for it in the end. And with any disease that's arising in your body, it's got to have a cause. And before you can correct or cure or whatever word you want to use, you have to remove the cause of disease. The cause of disease generally lies in a person's lifestyle or in their diet, number one, but somewhere in the lifestyle, their mental and emotional factors, the way they're thinking, if they're thinking bad thoughts, or if they're in a really stressful situation all the time, that's going to generate a lot of acids in the body, and the acids will eventually take their toll unless you can remove the stress to a certain extent. Okay, so that's number one. You've got to remove the cause. Number two, you've got to supply the normal biological requirements for your body. The normal biological requirements are proper diet, which is most suited to our physiology. It's not meat, it's not grain, it's not dairy. The most suitable diet that places less strain on our body is actually a frugivorous type of diet, okay, with the inclusion of green leafy vegetables, depending on your location, etc. But the more you alter that ideal type of diet, the price you pay. So supplying the normal biological requirements to your body, proper diet. Number two, movement, exercise, very important. Number three, as I said, with the movement and the exercise, you've got to utilize corrective exercise where you're getting your body upside down every day. I think is pretty essential. Instead of just sitting and standing like we do all day, upside down at some stage. It's an upside down world, I'll tell you, it's crazy. So we have to get upside down every day to reverse the stress of gravity. And I like to promote the use of the inversion boots, which have a hook on the front of the boot, and you can hook it over a bar and hang upside down. I could show later on another video, and they're on YouTube, of exercises you can get in that position. And number three is pure air if you can get it. If you're living in a improper environment where you're subjected to polluted air all the time, that's bad news. Water is very important, but with our type of diet that we're promoting here on fruit, I don't drink water actually. I just get enough water out of the fruit. And the water out of the young coconut is excellent if you're really hot and been sweating, etc. So that's those factors: pure food, exercise, proper air, deep breathing through your lungs, which are promoted with exercise, and also one of the most important factors is mental poise. So you're smiling, positive thinking, positive emotions. You've got to be fairly positive. And sometimes you'll go through down periods where you wonder, right, wow, is this all working? But have a glimpse and just go quietly into an area and look outside. There's always something in nature that's taking place that's positive. You know, birds are building their nest, or young are being fed, and yeah, life goes on. So it's the same with you. Life will go on if you've got a positive mental outlook. If you want to just give up, man, you'll start feeling, is it all worth it? It's worth it, especially if you're healthy, okay? So get healthy first, because that's what makes it worth it, especially as you get a bit older, like myself. And since I've traveled to the Philippine Islands many times, about 7 or 8 times, and find the people there are with nothing. They've got poverty, they've got living in rubbish dumps, on the top of rubbish dumps, and yet still some of them can smile. It's just amazing, you know. So the human spirit has got huge capacity to recover. And I love the Philippine Islands because of the people there. I like the tropical fruit there. There's quite a big Russian contingent living in the Philippines, in Samal Island on the southern Philippines, and I'm very well associated with them in their endeavors there, because they're truly living the dream, because they're able to access a lot of the tropical fruits that are around the area. How I first got into some of the tropical fruits that were growing in northern Australia was back in 1980, after the Woodstock Fruit Festival had took place at Woodstock here. Woodstock was a hippie area, and there was a lot of hippies spawned from that movement. Some of them went around the world collecting seeds and sending them back to a suitable area whereby they could be grown and planted. And that's what happened, was that there was a number, maybe about 10, 12 people were dedicated to doing this. One of the guys by the name of Alan Carl, who has a website, and on the web is Botanical Ark. He's created a botanical ark back in Australia with, it's got 500 different types of fruits growing on his property, and he's sent seeds back from endangered species from threatened areas that are being cut down because of man's greed in order to plant monoculture instead of having diversity. And back in the 80s there was a movement towards creating areas in North Queensland with some of these fruits from the Amazon, from Central America, from Southeast Asia, like the abiu, the Rollinia deliciosa, the black sapote, the chocolate pudding fruit. They were all coming into our area, and nowadays we can go to downtown markets in my area of Cairns, North Queensland, and sample all these fruits like the Matisia, which taste like a rock melon and a mango mixed together, rambutans, mangosteens, and even marang. Yeah. Yes, we have marang there too. I have a fruiting marang on my property that I've got up in North Queensland. I've only got 2 acres now left because of the divorce, but still there's a marang tree there, and that is really up there with the durian as far as being a really nice fruit. It's a little less fat than the durian, but the durian is still, the fat is very assimilable into the body, so it's not harming the body. It's more like it goes straight towards energy in the body. So generally speaking, the variety of fruit, there are actually 10,000 edible plant species in the world. Okay, some of them some of them people have to cook to live on them, but there's that many edible plant species in the world, probably upwards of about 10,000. That's huge, and a lot of them are obtained, but our true home is in the region of the palms. So it's amazing how man has spread into more undesirable climatic areas because of wars, pressure of land. When the use of fire started to come in, it caused in some ways it was beneficial. It allowed man to survive, but we did so at a price. Yeah. At a price, you know, and we've paid the price with our obesity and our problems with heart disease and cancer. You see it all over the world, just flooding in, and yet people, as they get older, they feel as though, oh, I can't give up this, or they have what their cells in their bodies are made up of, that's what they crave. So if your cells are made up of meat and alcohol, that's what your cells are going to crave, you know. So if your cells are made up of fruit and raw vegetables, that's what you'll crave. So I don't have any cravings for cooked food or meat or alcohol or anything like that. You just lose that craving. It's amazing. But it takes 3 or 4 years to fully reach that stage where you can do that, because all the cells in the body are renewed after 7 years, no matter what. So say 50% of your cells are made up of meat and alcohol after 3.5 years still, so you might still occasionally get cravings, you know. Yeah. So it's all a question of time, and yes, Rome wasn't built in a day, Moscow wasn't built in a day, and the beautiful cities around the world, well, it's better to have, eventually, for young people, I would say, if you can get a little bit of land, plant your own food and make it sustainable, that's going to be the best way. So I can't add too much more than that, but I hope maybe we could inspire some people to give up their way of life and think about an alternative if you can, because if you can, you'll have a far more peaceful existence where you won't require, you'll be able to live more simply. That's what, simplicity is the answer as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to accumulate possessions too much. I'd rather be fairly more simple, and that's what is more sustainable. If you're going to have a large population around the world, you've got to live more simply so you don't totally rape the planet too much.
And you still keep that farm, yeah? You have still
I have one property now, which is 2 acres, which is yeah, it's not very big, but it's not as big as the other property that I previously had, which I'd spent 27 years creating a beautiful paradise there, but we had it was complicated, but part of the divorce settlement we had to sell that big property. But that was a thing I learned from selling it after creating that, and thinking, yeah, acceptance, you know, letting go. If you can let go, you don't become too attached to things. You know, if you can have that ability to let go and move on, because life, no matter what it is, it's a lesson. That's what I've found. Life's a lesson, and I'm still smiling at 70. I've met a new partner which is half my age and making me feel young again, and I'm happy, you know, no matter what. So that's better than being less positive, I guess, even though I don't have much. I don't have much material wealth, and that's, well, you know, yeah. I'm still climbing trees and doing handstands and hanging out with lots of nice people, and that to me is what life should be all about, more rewarding, okay?
And how do you feel at 70 in general?
In general,
like,
no aches and
what's
pain.
Your health state? After all these years of being raw vegan?
Yeah. I don't feel as though I've lost too much. I was able to walk the length of a football field on my hands still, and admittedly it's taking me to go half the length of the field, and then I have a bit of a rest, but then I can still walk on to get the length of a football field. So that's pretty reasonable, and maintaining movement. I've been lucky enough to be in a profession that is a drugless profession, whereby we're moving to a certain extent around patients, freeing their locked areas of their spine that might be causing impingement. But I should add that most of people that have back pain and neck pain and headaches, etc., it's all for a reason. And even just the reason is that there's waste products of metabolism building up in those areas that are causing pressure. Pain is nothing more than pressure, internal pressure building in certain areas. And as I said previously, the body in its wisdom doesn't want to harm the more vital organs such as the eye and the heart and the brain, so it pushes out these toxins into maybe in the muscles, into the joints initially. But once they start to, if you start to continue with those abuses to your body through your diet, more serious problems will arise, and you've got to reverse that, and that does take some time depending on your age and the condition and that you've subjected the amount of abuses to your body. You build health through correct living, you build disease through incorrect living, and that's as simple as it gets pretty well.
And also I'm interested, what's your typical daily intake, like calorie-wise or by weight or whatever, like what you eat on the average day?
I find as I'm getting older, I tend to need to eat less, and I think it is, but when I was first, over 20 years ago, when I was first going raw vegan, I was eating quite a lot more than I do now, but I was still even more active on the property, looking after trees, mulching and shoveling and mowing, etc. And what I find on my typical day now, I just have a 2-meal-a-day plan. Now, there's a very good book written by a Russian lady who now lives in America. Her name is Tonya Zavasta, and she has written a book called Quantum Eating. Now, Quantum Eating, she's a very knowledgeable lady, and she recommends that you gradually cut back the time of your last meal during the day. So in other words, you start, you've been usually used to eating maybe in the evening at about 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, when you finish work and everything. She recommends, and I entirely agree with her, if you can increase the period of not eating, it allows longer for your body to repair and restore itself overnight. So cutting back to, say, stopping eating at 5 o'clock, and then cutting it back gradually over a period of months to 3 o'clock eventually in the afternoon, stopping eating then, allowing your body to fully detoxify and repair is very beneficial. So the quantum eating approach, utilizing the meridians of the body, which are most active for digesting food through the liver and the stomach and the pancreas, are all very active round about late morning, early afternoon. So if you can eventually get, which I do in Australia, get to the stage where I'm eating the last meal should be around about 2 o'clock. Okay, and then allowing that period. So that's what I find. A 2-meal-a-day plan for me suits me. In the morning I would have fruit or melon, papaya, and maybe 3 or 4 bananas sliced up with papaya and passion fruit. These are things that you can get all the year round in my area, no matter what. You've got papaya, passion fruit, banana. They're easily digested, and I find them very good. So the first meal would probably be that, or melon. It's better to eat mono meal if you can. It places less strain on your body, and you will notice that going mono on it for a few meals really helps you. So I recommend that. And the second meal that I'd have would be around about 1 or 2 o'clock, where I'd have a sprouted coconut, which is a whole different thing to tell you about. Yeah, they call it buat.
Ubud is the white thing from the middle of the trunk. Yeah.
That's right. It's called buat in the Philippines, which is the apple inside the sprouted coconut. And I slice that and make it into like a sandwich sometimes, and a green smoothie on top of that, and that's a nice second meal. Sometimes I have a big salad with tomatoes, and a lot of the fruit that you'd have in a salad is like zucchini or marrow and tomatoes, and they're all fruits actually. Cucumber, that's a fruit too, you know. So, but I still recommend having some green leaf vegetables like chard or lettuce or spinach or kale or celery. Yes, it's good as part of the diet, and I'd utilize that at my second meal. So that's what generally right now 2 meal a day plan is good. But don't be too hard on yourself. As long as you're eating raw, that's going to make the big difference. And often if you've got a problem that you're trying to correct in your body, be it circulatory, or be it cholesterol level, or high blood pressure, or failing eyesight even. I found that I used to have to use glasses for reading. Now I'm finding, no, I don't really need them so much now, after being raw for a long period of time, your eyesight does improve too, so that's an amazing factor. And another factor about the eye, now that I've mentioned it, is that if you're practicing inverted and exchanging your posture in relation to gravity, the roundness of the eye will tend to be maintained instead of it being flattened out and more oblong if you don't do anything else in your life but sit and stand. So therefore, practicing exchange will help to keep the eye nice and round and maintain your eyesight even better than it would otherwise be, So there's all these little factors that you learn as you go along, and so that's my meal ID now. I used
Calorie-wise,
Calorie-wise, probably be under 2,000 calories. Yes, even for a very active type of. If a banana contains around about 100 calories, and I'd probably have on an average day maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 bananas. Sometimes maybe that's 700 calories.
Not 30 bananas.
That's good when you're starting out. You can use that, But as your body becomes more efficient, you'll find that you don't quite need that amount of nutrient to maintain your level of activity and your efficiency. So that's my regime as it currently is. But life, the only constant about life is change. Change will take place, but as long as it's change in the correct direction and in accordance with the laws of nature, yes, it's going to be beneficial down the track. So generally, little eating. Eventually, I think you should aim for that rather than that's the way that most people. We don't realize it, but we are designed as a fat accumulating being, because in our ancestry, in our past history, we've been subjected to many, many thousands of years of either plenty for a while and then famine for a while. So we become quite efficient as fat storers. And you might say to me, oh, I don't want to accumulate fat. And yes, but that's just the way it is. We are very efficient at accumulating fat because of the fact that we either have plenty and then we had periods of fairly famine where we had to live off our own resources. And that's why the eating plan that I mentioned is kind of beneficial, because you don't allow the fat storage to really take place because of the longer period of not eating in between, but it becomes actually more pleasurable to have an empty stomach than it does to have a full one, which is kind of an interesting experience after a while. So it's no doubt that eating is a pleasure and it's designed to be that way. But the fact is that we are, as I said, accumulators of fat. We were used to having periods of famine. So if we have that short 18-hour period of not eating and not even drinking during that period, that's good after you get used to it. But work into it gradually, okay? Yeah.
So thank you very much, Robert.
It's a pleasure. I don't know if I've
I think
answered a couple of questions.
You cover all the topics we possibly imagined.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and hope to see you again.
It was a pleasure.
Next year and year after that. And hope.
You never know. I'm going to, if any of you wanted to know a little bit more, I do have a website which I've just created before I left to come here, which is Sun Food Health Retreat. So that's just think of .com. That's it.